MS Now's Ali Vitale is there in Chappaqua, where this deposition and Bill Clinton's tomorrow are happening. Also with us, Eric Fudali, whose firm represents Epstein survivors, and former Manhattan Assistant DA law professor Rebecca Roiphe is here as well. Ali, Chairman Comer spoke a little bit earlier. He said today is going to be a long deposition, but this is not the first time the Clintons have had to answer questions from lawmakers under oath. How do we expect this to go?
Not the first time that they've done it. And look, I have very big doubts that this is going to go longer than that Benghazi hearing. And so you know that Hillary Clinton has done this before. I also know that she was spending yesterday preparing for questions that might be asked. And I think one of the questions that one of my colleagues here in the press corps just asked Chairman or Ranking Member Garcia, rather, is what could they possibly talk to Hillary Clinton about for that many hours? I think one of the answers to that might be how the Clinton Global Initiative may have gotten some of its funding. But again, that is more a question for Bill Clinton, not Hillary Clinton. And I think that consistent throughout this is likely to be what Clinton has to do of redirecting questions, because she is effectively being put in a position here to once again be answering for actions that her husband may or may not have undertaken. And I think that for those of us who have watched Hillary Clinton's career over the course of the last many decades, that is a consistent theme. The New York Times did a great piece on this going back all the way to the 1990s about the way that Hillary Clinton has in the past been forced to answer for her husband's deeds and misdeeds. And this does seem like another chapter in that book. I also think it is a particularly gendered chapter, unsurprising given the work that I've done in the gender and politics space, I'm sure to you, Anna. But I also think then if you draw it back to this investigation and where this might go, the other question that Democrats were just answering is, OK, what precedent does it set if you have prominent Democrats, a former Secretary of State and former President of the United States, both being subpoenaed to testify here? Doesn't that open the door for more questions to be asked of Republicans, people like Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick? And frankly, he's one of the first people that I thought to ask Chairman James Comer about. And I want to play for you what Comer said when I said, OK, in the spirit of non or bipartisanship, are you going to ask Lutnick to come testify? Listen to what Comer told me.
That's very possible, and I think I think it's a good possibility that his name will arise in some questioning today.
It'll be on my list, and I have an email I printed off for Hillary to ask about Howard Lutnick today.
Okay.
So
God's watching.
We're asking again, and I want to remind everyone: we've already brought in Alex Acosta and Bill Barr for depositions. That's two Republicans in the Trump administration. So this isn't just about Democrats.
OK, so yes, they did bring in other Republican officials. Bill Barr, of course, the head of the DOJ under Trump in his first term, Alex Acosta, the labor secretary in Trump's first term, but also the prosecutor at the time in Florida who brokered that initial sweetheart deal for Epstein. So, of course, questions to be asked of him. And yet I also think that if the goal of this investigation is to just ask anyone who comes up in the files about what they knew about Epstein, for someone like Howard Lutnick, he seems to be offering a lot in the public forum consistently about the relationship he had with Epstein, what he saw at Epstein's home. They were neighbors for a short time. And so I do think it's notable that Comer seemed to, at least at first, leave on the table the idea of wanting to talk to Lutnick. And the question now is, if he comes up in a deposition today in whatever capacity, and I'm starting to look into what email that might be that Nancy Mace says she has, if he's brought up in this deposition, does that then mean that the majority who controls subpoena power here will then push towards subpoenaing him? And I have to just add quickly, Anna, the other thing here, if we have Hillary Clinton in here answering for her husband, I think there's also an open question that I've heard a few times today, which is, if that's the case, then will this committee also then want to talk to someone like Melania Trump, who is also mentioned in the files?
All good points. Ali Vitale, you ticked off a lot there. And Howard Lutnick is somebody we heard Garcia, the ranking member, say they wanted to talk to. He also pressed very hardly that they're going to demand the President Trump, that is, be required to testify before lawmakers. I want to note we've seen Hillary Clinton arrive for this deposition that's taking place at the Chappaqua Performing Arts Center today. So as soon as we learn what questions she's been asked, what answers she's giving, we're going to continue to update you right here. Let me come to the table. And Rebecca, the DOJ is saying now it is reviewing some reporting and looking into whether 3 interview memos involving an alleged Trump accuser were withheld from the Epstein files release. We don't know for sure if these files and what these missing FBI interviews actually entailed, whether there were actual accusations against Trump in them. But even before this week's revelation, Secretary Clinton was alleging the White House or the DOJ is trying to cover up something. Do you expect her to lean on that, to bring that up in today's deposition?
I very much do. And look, in any kind of situation where an investigation is being conducted by politicians or by a Department of Justice whose impartiality has been seriously compromised, I think it's very hard for the public to be reassured that what comes out of that is actually truly factual. So there are political points to be gained by saying this is bipartisan and saying this is non-political. But how do we as observers, as outsiders, gain any reassurance that that's the case?
And Eric, Hillary Clinton wasn't the one in the photos in the files. Certainly her husband was. But why do you think Hillary Clinton is a top priority to be deposed by this committee?
Well, I'm certainly adamant that anyone who had any real connections to Jeffrey Epstein is someone who should be questioned, someone who should be examined and perhaps even investigated. Certainly Bill Clinton is on that list. And of course, my clients do not care what political party anyone is. They want to see full transparency, questions asked, hard questions asked, and full investigation. Hillary Clinton, much less so. I believe this one's a little bit performative, I think, from this administration. I think this is really more probably just a show to pretend that they actually care what Hillary Clinton has to say. I don't really think there's going to be much there. And to me, this seems a bit partisan. It seems this is part of the cover-up. I think that this whole thing seems to be like, well, look, oh, no, we're doing everything we can. We even brought in Hillary Clinton. The connections, from what I can tell and the evidence I've seen, are very, very limited between Hillary Clinton and the Epstein. So this, to me, seems like a distraction from what they should be doing, which is releasing every single document, unredacting every single name, and bringing those who are really actually connected to Jeffrey Epstein, which includes President Trump, in for real questioning.
We know Hillary Clinton has said outright she never met Jeffrey Epstein, never had any interactions with him, but she has acknowledged she met Ghislaine Maxwell, who is Epstein's co-conspirator, a few times. We know that Maxwell was at Chelsea Clinton's wedding in 2010, played a role in supporting the Clinton Global Initiative. How much do you expect that to dominate the deposition?
I imagine it will be a lot. I mean, I assume that there will be some actual pointed questions that are actually intended to glean real information, perhaps learn names and connections of other people who Hillary Clinton might know were associated with Jeffrey Epstein. Also, though, I think there's going to be a little bit of just sort of performative accusing her, performative sort of arguing with her, trying to, certainly some Republicans are going to try to, get their moment of really, digging into Hillary Clinton. But I think for the most part, there might be some information gleaned. But I believe it's going to really just be sort of this partisan performance without really any true investigatory tactics taken.
And Rebecca, are today's questions limited to just Epstein and Maxwell, or could Republicans use this as an opportunity to ask about a whole host of other issues that may involve Hillary Clinton, like Benghazi?
I think that they could probably do whatever they want. I mean, there's so few constraints, the kinds of constraints you would see in a courtroom where the evidence is clearly carefully curated to relevance to the topic that's at hand. Here we have, again, it can be a sort of political drama. And so I think the thing about Hillary Clinton is that she is a character that is, to so many represents, things that they dislike or things that they love. And because of that, they can project a million things on her and gain some political points from that. And I do think I agree that that's a distraction from what's at issue here and what they should be doing, which is really trying to uncover what the facts are. And I think a key part of that is following the money. And maybe the Clinton Foundation has some part or has something to do with that. And if so, they should get to the bottom of it. But again, the rest of this is really just political drama that's a distraction.
Rebecca, we know the committee refused to accept written testimony as they went back and forth with the Clintons that led to today. Is there value to doing the questioning in person versus accepting that written testimony?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, anybody who has ever worked with trained investigators know that what they are trained to do is to push back. And if you're writing down what you want to write down, you can be careful and you can sort of carefully disguise things. But if you're dealing with somebody who knows how to ask questions, they won't let you do that. They'll keep coming back until they get the answer that they want, and they push through the veneer that you're trying to present. So I absolutely understand why you would want personal testimony rather than written testimony.
Eric, we did hear Chairman Comer say this is about transparency and this is about accountability, and he pointed to some of the accountability we've seen now in the fallout as it pertains to people resigning from boards or other positions. Larry Summers leaving Harvard. Bill Gates just apologized to his foundation. In the UK, we've seen arrests actually involving a former ambassador to the U.S., involving a former prince. I wonder, how do your clients feel about all of that, the kind of accountability we've seen so far? Is it enough?
It's certainly not enough, but I will say it's a great start. It's important to remember that all of this sort of societal accountability we're seeing and like real accountability we're seeing overseas is thanks to these survivors who have not kept quiet, who have continued to fight, who have continued to advocate. Remember, these survivors have been wronged by the Department of Justice, by law enforcement for decades and decades. And what's so remarkable is they continue to fight, and they are the sole reason we are actually seeing accountability. This administration wanted this story to end months and months and months ago, and they never gave up. And now that we see the release of these files, we're seeing real accountability. People fired, people losing their jobs, people having to apologize, people actually arrested, and it's so remarkable. And I think we owe a real debt of gratitude to these survivors who have fought so hard, but it's not nearly enough. We need to see real criminal accountability in the United States, real criminal investigations, not a bipartisan political drama, but real investigations, real criminal investigations, and real accountability in the United States, not just the UK, so these survivors can really get the exposure, the accountability, the justice, and then the closure they deserve.
Yeah, even Comer acknowledged that theirs is not like a legal investigation. They're